and I'm trying to see if I could um, shoot. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that this the camera orientation is to where trying to test out a green screen right now. Sorry, I don't think I'm gonna do the green screen, so just leave it like that. Um, hmm. Let me just check out their settings. I can't rotate it, can I? Orientation is locked. Okay. How much stars do I have on my phone? All right. Well, I'll see what I can do in terms of making sure that this doesn't. Can I turn this around right? Okay. Sorry. The only reason is because there's like a little black spot right there on my little camera lens. So, um, all right, we'll just leave it like that. So, hello everybody. It's your boy Taco Bueno, aka Gabe Salazar. For those who already know, I go by El Taco Bueno on my YouTube channel while uploading Call of Duty gameplay, Resident Evil gameplay, and a lot of other games I played in the past. And if you did or did not know, I'm also a author, and I will be doing a live reading of my first novel, The Darkest Winter, which I published Thanksgiving week last year. And it's probably one of the greatest opportunities I could take, being able to publish by myself my very first novel. And today is special because we're going to be doing a live reading of the book. And before I get into the reading, I'll just give you a bit of a background of what I was doing in terms of the writing process. So let me rotate the screen back to me, and I'll kind of just explain how I got into the writing process. So, for around 3 or 4 years or so, I was working on not only this novel, but like a few projects for graphic novels, all written by myself. And what ended up happening was they all panned out really good, but in the end, I just felt like it could have been better. And because of what I wanted to do, instead was write novels like this one, The Darkest Winter, I put those graphic novel projects aside, and this is how The Darkest Winter came up. So I was working on a few character descriptions for this novel, and one of the descriptions that I was trying to do was somebody who was going through a tough time but would come out on top and serve as a good example of no matter how bad life gets, you could always come back on top and just be able to inspire others to be a better person. So that's how the character of Carlos Zapata came to be, which is somebody who, or who is the main protagonist of this novel, The Darkest Winter. So that being said, I then ended up just trying to create more characters and this and that, and then in terms of the setting, I base it on where I live in Frisco, Texas, and in the state of Texas. Except I did a little fictionalized version of it, which you'll hear during this live reading. So that's just basically how I came up with The Darkest Winter in the basic format that I can explain it. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. And to Mason and to nobody, thank you for joining, and everyone that's trying to join right now. I'm trying to see if I could add a comment on this thing. I think I actually shoot. think I actually have to go and write a comment on here. I should have thought about that crap. But I know I could share, quick share to people. Never mind. Sorry, I reconnected for a bit. My apologies. I'm just trying to see how this works so I could be able to send it to some people that I know. Okay, we got that. I'm going to be disconnecting and reconnecting a few times, so just bear with me, okay? And I promise, once this is done, we will be able to commence the live reading. Also, if you hear dogs barking or people talking in the background, oh, thank you, Phyllis. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Anyway, so if you hear dogs barking or any people talking or yelling in the background, it's just we have people over. So I'll try my best to get through it without having to pause so much. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. The Darkest Winter by me, Gabe Salazar, aka El Taco Bueno, 1995. The events of the story are entirely fictional. The story also does not feature traditional dialogue between characters, basically meaning that there's no like back and forth conversations all in separate sentences and whatnot, just to kind of keep the flow of the novel going. And the events and the dialogue are explained by the protagonist. So it's just basically like a point of view kind of action going on. So let's get right into it. And the book is dedicated to my loved ones, my family, my friends, who had been waiting patiently at the time for me to get the novel released. Thank you all for your love and support. So we'll see how far we get into the book. I will be trying to take a few breaks from time to time so that I don't run out of breath while reading. So without further ado, let's begin. January 1st, 2024. There are many who say that a new year often brings new beginnings or good fortune. There are many things to look forward to, also such as getting a dream job or winning the lottery with an extreme amount of luck on your side. Prayers are answered, and some eventually get answered with time and patience. However, for those who have had a rough last year and are wishing for better fortunes, it'll take time to heal all wounds and even fix mistakes that were made in the past. Why am I giving out the basic details of how the new year is supposed to be? Well, let's just say that I'm part of the latter who had a pretty bad previous year, and I'm not very confident in the fact that time will heal any past wounds. My name is Carlos G. Zapata, and I live in the city of Farley. I was a delivery driver for a delivery company during the day and at night. I moonlighted as a painter who sold paintings at a decent price. Delivering paid me well, but painting takes time to create beautiful art, so the payment for my second job doesn't make ends meet. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in the city of Farley. From the outside, I have a pretty nice view of the lake to the left of Farm to Market 324. During the spring and summer, you can see people relax on their boats and enjoy the sunshine. However, life hasn't been good to me from last year going into the new year. The first thing is money. Money's been tight, and there have been times where I was late on rent and utilities. The second thing is me being in a pretty bad car accident, which resulted in my right knee getting broken. The accident happened back in November, and I wasn't able to work for a while, and my medical bills were pretty high. The last thing, and this is what has really affected me, is my fiancée called off our engagement. On her own account, she called off the engagement because she didn't want to marry someone who made a living off delivery driving and painting. She wanted to marry someone who was financially stable and was rich. The other was the good-looking part. Apparently, I wasn't good-looking enough for her. Me and her had been engaged for months following our breakup, and her telling me these reasons really took a crushing blow on my self-esteem and confidence. She called off our engagement on Christmas of all days, so Christmas to me now seems like the worst day to spend time with family and loved ones. Another reason which also has affected my self-esteem and confidence was my ethnicity. While she was okay being with a Mexican, her family didn't approve. This was something she told me right when she called off our engagement. To think that you can be engaged with someone for a period of time, only for them to just throw you away like trash, is just flat out disgusting. I didn't even do anything wrong. I've done what I've had to make sure that I was financially stable, and I made sure that I was able to pay for our dates and gifts. Most importantly, I've always treated her with the utmost respect and love. But now it's over. On New Year's Eve, I worked until 4 p.m. As soon as I got off, I went to my family's place to celebrate. Only it wasn't for celebrating. When I arrived, there wasn't any music playing like we've always have. There wasn't any laughing or chatting around the living room. It was an awkward silence. When I had asked what was wrong, my mother told me to have a seat. My whole family was sitting on both sides of me, and they had sad looks in their eyes. My mother was explaining to me that the financial situation I was in was affecting my family's finances. Ever since my accident, they were helping me pay off a bit of my medical bills and my groceries. I hated asking for money, but I had thought if anyone could help me, my family would help me in desperate times. As such, this had put a lot of financial stress on my family. I apologized over and over and stated that when I had enough money saved up, I would be able to pay back the debt that I owed them. They weren't putting up with it, and that night it was my family members telling me that I was a freeloader and that I didn't deserve any benefits from anyone, including them. I wasn't trying to be a burden on them. My accident really affected the money I was making, and not being able to work in order to make the money I could have been making. After each family member gave their rants, I just looked like the biggest loser on the planet. I left the house apologizing for everything that I did to them, and they didn't even accept my apologies. I went to bed that night with tears flowing in my eyes and clutching my heart because the pain was ridiculously unbearable. I was trying to pray to numb the pain, but I couldn't find my courage or strength anymore to do this task. I was repeatedly begging, please God, for minutes on end until I was too exhausted to even speak. I had passed out before the clock struck midnight. When I woke up at 9 in the morning, my eyes were red and hurting. The excessive amount of guilt was still heavy on my heart, and I couldn't find any courage or strength to get out of bed. My Bible was still next to me on the nightstand by my phone whenever I was begging for God to help me. I was hesitant to look at my phone because I had feared that my family or my ex-fiancée had sent me a text of how much of a failure I was. When I had the nerve to check my phone, I had one missed call from my boss at the delivery company, Christian, and he left a voice message. His message explained that I was fired due to not being able to physically perform heavy-duty work within the past few weeks due to my accident. He stated that the company required healthy individuals, and it was his way of saying that I was slowing the team down and the company down, quote-unquote. What a shitty way to start my day. I never got a message from my family or my friends wishing me a happy new year. I ended up falling back asleep with more tears in my eyes and pain in my heart. How much pain can one man endure when all he has done was fight for his life to not drown in a sea of suffering? I woke up again at noon and I was pretty hungry. I slowly got out of bed to brush my teeth and fix my hair. Ever since I broke up with my ex-fiancée, I had a hard time looking at myself in the mirror thinking I was decent looking. Imagine having to do this task and end up saying to yourself that looks don't count for anything when your ex tells you that you're not good looking enough and saying that she can't be married to a Mexican to avoid being shamed by her family. You're ending up having to brush your teeth, fix your hair, or if you're a woman, doing your hair and makeup knowing that your looks don't count for anything. After brushing my teeth and fixing my hair, I went to the kitchen to go and cook brunch. It was a basic brunch of scrambled eggs, toast, and pork sausage patties. Usually, I would watch YouTube or some show that I was currently watching, but no. I ended up eating with the background noise of cars driving down the Farnham Market 324. It felt terrible eating my brunch, hearing cars ride down to their daily communes and jobs, or even meeting their friends for a cup of coffee. It felt terrible knowing that I was now unemployed with no beautiful woman saying good morning by my side, no family praying for my health and safety, and feeling like a burden. After finishing breakfast, I went to get my Bible and turned to Psalm 27:10. I kept reading the passage over and over to try to numb the pain. I somehow wasn't able to get a grip of myself and close my Bible. The comfort that I sought within the Lord was losing its grip on my well-being. What was even worse was that my mother, who was my role model for my entire life, advised that I keep my relationship with God at an almighty high so that way life can seem less stressful. It's now the complete opposite, ever since my family made me feel like a burden for the financial stress that I put them in. I admitted my guilt, my sin, and if I had the finances to pay them back, God knows that my reward of paying back my debt with easy anxiety and stress that my family was going through. I put the Bible away on my bookshelf and went to use the restroom and take a shower afterwards. I'm hoping that I can find the courage to ask God for peace and comfort when I'm mentally able to. After showering and getting dressed, I went to go get the mail. As I feared, it was a letter from the leasing office about getting evicted from my apartment. I freaked myself out and nearly had a heart attack due to stress. Excuse me. But then I remembered that I was able to pay some of the debt that I owed the leasing office. But still, the situation of getting evicted and being homeless, knowing that nobody would take me into their own privacy, was heart-wrenching as my situation was. The other mail I got was junk mail. However, there was one letter that I got from the Farley police of all places. The letter stated that they were offering training to anyone that wanted to become a police officer. They were also handing out free booster shots to combat the newly discovered Code D virus. Ever since December of last year, there were people who fell ill and were severely hospitalized. The crazier part about Code D was that anyone that was infected would eventually die within hours or days. It didn't matter if you had gotten a booster shot either. Everyone had to follow the new protocols that ensure safety from the virus. But much like the last pandemic we had, there were people who didn't follow the procedures, and even some were now protesting. The protests only started because most of the residents here weren't allowed to enter a restaurant, store, or other businesses due to not following the rules. The protests soon turned violent, and many residents died due to these incidents. From what I had heard, some of the casualties have been officers who died on the line of duty. I read the entire letter from the police and what I needed to do to become a police officer, including the link to their website and the benefits of becoming a cop. It sounded pretty good, but I was also a bit nervous since I only stay physically fit from running and lifting packages. Then the thoughts of what my ex-fiancée said about my appearance filled my mind like a life-threatening poison. Clutching the letter, I closed my eyes and I told myself I had to do this. Something inside me, besides the negative thoughts, told me that being a cop meant being something much greater than myself. What did that mean exactly? I didn't know the answer, but I figured that I could help the city since there was so much going on with the Code D running rampant and people fighting on the streets. Near the end of the letter, they say that anyone who signs up to be a cop needs to receive a booster shot for the Code D virus. The incentive of getting a booster shot and training was an automatic $1,000 reward. $1,000? I couldn't believe it. I then had another thought about seeing this incentive the police were offering. Was this God's way of saying that this is one way of being able to climb out of this debt? Was this a trick that the Farley police were playing on me? There was no way the law would trick citizens like that. Nonetheless, I didn't have time to think about it as I went back to my apartment to go to the link that was on the letter. I signed up to get my booster tomorrow at noon. The website stated that a bus is going to pick us up 2 hours before we got our boosters. I didn't know if I should be excited or relieved, but all I did know was that I needed the money. Minutes later, I got an email from the Braxton Medical Center that contained my participant ID number and told me to download it onto my phone. For some reason, I felt like sharing the news with my family, but I was hesitant because I feared that they wouldn't answer. The first person I called was my mother. No answer. It was my father's turn. No answer. The next few people I was going to call were my siblings. If my mother and father didn't answer my phone calls, there was definitely no chance that they would answer either. I get that making someone feel guilty for their sins is common, but to make someone feel like a burden because of those sins is an even bigger sin, although they thought otherwise. At dinner time, I made myself a hamburger mac and cheese, but I used a little bit of the taco seasoning that my mother gave me for the meat. It was very flavorful and delicious. It's basically a macaroni and cheese with taco seasoned ground meat. However, I did the same routine that I did at noon. I ended up eating with the sound of cars driving on the Farm Market 324 road and just thinking about how fortunate they were to go home to their families after working. One of my favorite dishes to cook was now very difficult to enjoy. It was a guilt that was making me lose my appetite, besides my strength and courage. I decided that I would only eat half of the amount of food I cooked and store the rest in the fridge. By bedtime, I prayed to God that good fortune would come with the awarded money for getting my booster and or sorry, let me say that again. Sorry. By bedtime, I prayed to God that good fortune would come with the awarded money for getting my booster shot tomorrow. Although it would benefit the population to be healthy and avoid getting Code D, I really needed the money and wanted this nightmare to end. I really felt like this was one of God's miracles. I felt that him telling me to answer the ad to become a cop request would help me for a bit with the stress that I was dealing with. This was the first time in a long while that I actually felt less stressed and anxious going to bed. Or was it the exhaustion from the stress and anxiety? All I knew was once I finally became a police officer, it would be the new beginning I probably needed. Excuse me. All right, so that was the first chapter. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break and I'm going to see if I can comment the link to the first novel so you guys can check it out on my Amazon authors page. And you guys can be able to read a sample on the Kindle edition and the paperback edition of this book. So let me use the time I have for this break to do that. So just sit tight, guys. Excuse me. Okay, so as you can see in the chat, I left a link to my author's page, specifically the link for The Darkest Winter for the paperback edition. However, I do have it on Kindle as well. If you guys own a Kindle, and you can make a purchase there, or you can read a free sample of the book in either edition. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and start reading January 2nd, 2024. It was 9 a.m. when I woke up to get ready to be picked up for my booster appointment. There was going to be a transit to come and pick me up and a few other attendants up. Although I felt a little excitement for the appointment, I was still feeling a sense of stress and anxiety. Maybe it was because I had already gone through way too much stress and then it all added up to more anxiety. It was probably my depression that I was also dealing with from the aftermath of my breakup from my ex-fiancée. These feelings came back to me like a tidal wave when I looked at myself in the mirror. The sense of unattractiveness hit me like a fastball at 100 miles per hour, and tears started to form underneath my eyelids. I tried to shake it off so I could focus on the positives of today, but it's hard to think of anything positive when you're going through what I've been going through. Oh shit, sorry. I don't. Hold on, sorry. The computer I have is slow, so I don't know why I just switched pages. So, well, that's what it looks like when you go to my author's page. Anyway, okay. So at 10 a.m., the transit arrived at my apartment complex. It was me and 7 other tenants getting their boosters. Before we were able to sit, the bus driver handed out face masks and asked for our vaccine cards that we have from the last pandemic years ago. Once we were able to board the transit, the driver asked for us to be a seat apart in order to avoid close contact with one another. Once the transit took off for Daly, I began to look back at my apartment and then towards the sky. While looking at it, I put my hands together and prayed that the good fortune that I had wished for would still come true. As much as me being greedy was a sin, I really needed the money. I was also thinking that the other tenants on the transit were in the same position as I was. As such, I pray for good fortune for them as well. It was 11:30 by the time we arrived at Braxton Medical Center in Daly. We were told by the bus driver to exit in a single file line, but I had to stay 6 feet apart. This stop made me a bit nervous, but my determination... Jeez. Gosh, I was trying to hold in that cough, sorry. What helped me stay focused on getting that booster and the money? When me and the other tenants got to the conference room where they were giving out the boosters, we were told to sit in an assigned seat until our names were called. Hold on, I'm gonna drink water real quick. Oh my goodness, that was dry. It's usually never this dry, bro. I'm trying to read a book, so I do apologize if I had to do a few water breaks and all this and that. So let me reread that again. When me and the other tenants got to the conference room where they were giving out the boosters, we were told to sit in an assigned seat until our names were called. Looking around the conference room, there were a whole bunch of other civilians that were looking to get a booster shot as well. While waiting, I looked down at the floor, folded my hands together, and said a quick prayer that everything would work out just fine. After 10 minutes, my name was finally called to receive my booster. The nurse who gave me my booster was a woman who looked like she was in her mid-30s. She had brown hair and that had some gray strands in it. I figured it was because of the stress of Code D going around making her job much harder. You have to give credit and respect to the doctors and nurses that put their lives on the line in the case of a pandemic. They really do their best to make sure that everyone is safe and healthy. This nurse asked me how I was doing, and I told her that I was okay, even though I felt the sour sense in my mouth, knowing that I was lying. Sure enough, the nurse caught on real quick based on the sad look in my eyes. Getting caught red-handed with my lie, I told her my situation, and she offered her sympathies. She stated that she just went through a divorce, and it was hard for her to work at the hospital and raise her son and daughter. I felt terrible for this woman having to put in so much work and also dealing with a divorce that was probably painful for her emotionally and mentally. I suddenly began to have thoughts in my mind about my ex-fiancée. I imagine how life would have been if she didn't see me as this ugly human being and if I had a better financial situation. I also remember how many women I had asked out before I met my ex-fiancée and all the rejection I got from them because of the way I looked. Those same women told me that I was a really nice person to them. It's really ironic and frustrating how a man can have a nice personality but not have good-looking features about him. It contradicts the feeling of wanting to be loved and making it difficult to connect in a relationship. What's the point of asking someone out knowing that you don't have the looks to go along with the personality? I thank the nurse for giving me my booster, and I wish her the best of luck. She thanked me for the kind gesture. As soon as I was heading back to my seat to let the booster take effect, I caught a glimpse of the woman's left eye and saw that half of it was red. I had heard that one of the symptoms of Code D was having red, itchy eyes. The sudden fear began to give me goosebumps, and the nurse saw the goosebumps on my arm. She asked if there was something wrong, and I told her that was nothing to worry about. She didn't catch me lying that time, as she had to attend another civilian needing a booster shot. After resting for 15 minutes and letting the booster take effect, our bus driver called mine and other tenants' names to come back to the transit to head back home. While boarding the transit, I saw many citizens outside the hospital trying to enter to get a booster shot. They were all angry that the staff weren't letting them in since the hospital was full of Code D patients. This was bad. I had a feeling that one of them would start a fight and all hell would break loose. To my surprise, that's exactly what happened. A man who looked to be in his 40s struck one of the nurses in the jaw, causing her to fall to the pavement. Her face mask was covered in blood, and she was screaming bloody murder. Our bus driver told us to hurry and get inside the transit before the wild crowd came after us. From then on, I heard the angry citizens fighting the medical staff, and I could hear police sirens coming from the other side. On the ride back home, I looked up at the sky and felt a strange sense of relief. It was almost as if God was telling me that his plan for my future was going to work. I couldn't help but smile. It was the first time that I had smiled in a long time. It was the first time that I had felt a warm feeling in my heart, as if a big bandage was wrapped around the heartbreak that had consumed it these past few months. It's going to take about an hour for us to get back to the apartment complex, so I decided to take a nap to relax. Every time that I have fallen asleep, I've been having hellish nightmares. All the anxiety and stress had taken on the forms of demons that were attempting to metaphorically suffocate me into a slow, painful death. The last nightmare I had involved demons in the form of my ex-fiancée, who were barraging me with ugly descriptions of myself. Echoes of the word failure had filled the air in this particular nightmare. These demons were chasing me in a disturbing pitch-black scene where the only visible beings were the demons and myself. Chase scenes like this ended up with me getting sworn by the demons. Oh, shoot. Why? Hold on, guys. Oh, this is weird. Okay, there we go. I forgot that if I press the middle mouse button, it pastes the link that I copied. So let's go back to... I don't normally do this, guys, so I do apologize. All right, let's go back to... Okay. I'll try not to press the middle mouse button again. That's my bad. This is my first live stream for this novel, so hopefully the next few live streams will be like that. I do apologize. Anyway, every time that I woke up from these nightmares, I would always look down on my left ring finger in disappointment. The breakup really affected me, which was the root of all my recent nightmares, including the last one. Maybe if I hadn't been too messed up from the breakup, the nightmares wouldn't be as terrible, but I digress. When the transit bus arrived at my apartment complex, I was woken up by one of the other passengers. It was a man who looked like he was in his mid-30s. He told me that we made it back to the apartment complex and we needed to get off. After getting off the transit bus, I decided to check my mail since I didn't get to check it yesterday. From the looks of it, it was just junk mail and coupons. However, there was another letter. It was from the leasing office. It was an eviction notice saying that I had to move out by the 15th due to not being able to pay whatever amount I owed for rent. The sudden feeling of stinking depression caught up with me again. That slight happiness that I had when I was getting my booster for the $1,000 that the Farley police would offer for me, it was now stripped away by the hurt and pain for the eviction notice. I tried to stay calm and collected, but it had been very hard for me to be that way because of all that I had been through last year. I headed back to my apartment to give the leasing office a call, and I discussed with them about being able to pay a large sum of money because of the $1,000 offer. They gave me the okay to do it, although it was ironic how many chances they had given me when I wasn't able to pay the rent on time. Were those chances miracles from God? Hell if I knew. All I knew was that I needed to make some serious money so I could make sure that I was able to be financially stable. While looking through my emails, I had gotten something from the Farley police. Reading the email, it stated that they were looking for police detectives and someone who could write daily reports on the activities happening around Farley. This will mean a lot of investigating and making sure that incidents that happened had to be reported as well. Sounded like a good deal to me. I was really good at writing back when I was in school, so I went ahead and signed up to be a police detective. The company that I would be assigned to was called F Company. It sounded like a weird company, and I don't think the name fit with the police. It sounded like some type of squad of the military. I couldn't come up with a better name if I even thought of coming up with one, so F Company it was. I submitted my resume to them, and it was time to play the waiting game for them to get back to me. For some reason, I kept constantly checking my email for any sort of update from the police department. The sensation of excitement from this opportunity was very overwhelming, which caused me to check my email every 5 minutes. I really needed to not get in over my head. There were a lot of other things that I needed to take care of. I decided that the only way for myself to be a bit more relaxed was to pray to God for relief of stress and to help me focus on my objective of keeping... Excuse me. Let me read. Gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. Sometimes when I read, my throat gets dry. So, I decided the only way for myself to be a bit more relaxed was to pray to God for relief of stress and to help me focus on my objective of keeping my finances stable. At dinner time, I was cooking some taco. Excuse me. Let me drink some water real quick. I should be trying to take breaks in between paragraphs, but I'm trying to see how far we get without me having to take a break. So, and thank you to whoever who's still with me in this live stream and having to put up with the little mistakes and the little mini breaks I have to do. So I appreciate it. At dinner time, I was cooking some taco meat to make for some nachos. By the time I was done cooking, I got a notification from the police about my application. And with luck, I got an email from them. Hallelujah. I got that overwhelming sense of excitement again. There was a link to their website to set up an appointment for a virtual interview. There was a time slot for 10 in the morning, so I immediately clicked on it. Things were starting to look better for my current situation. It was only a matter of time before I could start making some good money. Later that night, I prayed again for good fortune and even for my physical health, considering there was a code D going around. I also prayed for my mental health and asked God to relieve me of my stress so I could find that feeling of relaxation again. And I thank them for this opportunity that was bestowed upon me. It was 11 p.m. when I had gone to bed. The warm feeling of the blanket and relaxation helped me sleep better than I had slept over the last year. There was no more anxiety. There was no more stress. There were no more tears while sleeping. It was an actual peaceful night. To be honest, it felt like it was God's other reward for me for all that I had to put up with. This was his test that he gave me, and I took it upon myself to find an opportunity that could help me get back on my feet. Now, I had to make sure that I wouldn't let this opportunity go to waste. This is my comeback. Alright, so we're going to take another little mini break so I could try to make sure I don't blow my voice out or anything. And, gosh, the computer's slow. I'm trying to move this thing. Oy. We're on page 34, so. Oh, gosh. Hang on. There we go. All right, cool. Alright, cool. There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry that you guys had to see all that. As I said, this is the first live stream that I'm doing for this book, so I'll get everything under control. And so, like I said, we're going to take a little break, probably like 5 minutes or so. I might go grab a snack, and yeah, we're going to continue. All right, and we are back. Thank you guys for waiting so patiently. So let's go ahead and get right into January 3rd, 2024. The next day started with me making my breakfast of scrambled eggs, pork, sausage links, and toast. It was more of a celebratory breakfast because of my excitement of getting a new job. The nervousness was slowly creeping its way back into my brain, but I didn't feel nervous as I had felt in the past. I was good with talking to people, so the interview was going to be a piece of cake. The only thing that would make me nervous during the interview was if I was being asked to travel. The injury that I sustained back in December kind of made it hard to move. My knees were the problem. They were always very sore, even when I took nighttime medicine. Massaging them didn't help either. But I had the feeling that since working for the police would require a lot of physical activity, I had to make sure that I was ready for anything. Excuse me, gosh. By the time I had to do the interview, I made sure that my room, which was in the background, didn't have too much clutter. It would make me look like a disorganized person, and I didn't want to make a terrible first impression. Sorry. The man who Phew! My gosh. I'm going, hold on. Sorry. Let me make sure my nose is blown. Alright. Sorry about that. By the time I had to do the interview, I made sure that my room, which was in the background, didn't have too much clutter. It would make me look like a disorganized person, and I didn't want to make a terrible first impression. The man who interviewed me was named Remy Lemond, a French-American police officer who acted very seriously towards me. Not only did his personality stand out, he was clean-cut and had a nice appearance. He wore the typical navy blue police uniform, but it looked like it was well ironed and sharp. His red hair was wavy up top, and the sides were very short. He looked really good compared to how I looked. Either or, most of the interview questions he asked me were about my physical activity, sleep schedule, and if I was willing to do a fitness test. What interested Remy about my application was being able to go around Farley and making sure that the citizens of Farley would be safe. Remy asked me if I was able to make daily reports on what I saw and be truthful about them. I swore my life to him that I would do everything that they asked me to. That is a typo. It's supposed to be Farley, not Frisco. It's funny because someone that is reading the book right now mentioned it to me. I was like, oh damn, I gotta fix that. Hopefully in the second edition, in the future I can fix it. Anyway, the nervousness that I mentioned that was trying to creep back into my psyche had now come out of nowhere. I felt the sweat on my hands form like I put them underneath Niagara Falls. Hell, even beads of sweat began to pour on my face. I didn't like the idea of reporting the things that can occur during this recent pandemic. A lot of things happened during the last pandemic that were that we were in, such as panic shopping, businesses closing, school functioning online, etc. The worst part was obviously getting the virus and suffering from the long-term effects of it. I was afraid of getting it just because I didn't want to have to suffer from any loss of any senses and having breathing problems. Most of the symptoms of COD could contribute to death if it isn't treated. Gosh, I'm trying to make sure the camera focuses. I'm holding this with my hands. Hopefully, in the next live stream, I can make sure that I don't have to be doing this. Oh, crap. Hit the middle mouse button again. Ah, dang it. Oh. What in the world? Okay. Alright. Sorry about that. Alright. Remy could see that something was off and asked if I was alright. I said that I was fine and I would be able to go around Farley and report any details that were happening during this pandemic. Remy smiled and said that I was hired. I couldn't believe it. I was able to easily secure my position as a member of the law. At least for now. Being excited as he was, I told him that I could start right away. Remy said that he was fine. Remy said that was fine and all, but he was waiting on the other applicants so that way he can get a full team going. He thanked me for doing the interview with him and he said that he would give me a call whenever the rest of the application process was finished on his end. Once the interview concluded, I somehow felt the nerve to call my family to tell them of them securing the job. Before I could reach my phone, I suddenly froze like ice water was being poured all over my body. Why the hell did I think that calling my family at a time like this was appropriate? It had only been a few days since we spoke, but it still didn't feel right that they would just push me away after all that I put them through. I still remember the fact that the Farley police would still send me the $1,000 incentive that they had promised for getting the booster for Code D. I was thinking that I could give them $1,000 as a way of paying them back. Then, with the money I would be making through my work as an officer, I would make bank and use that money for saving for my rent and bills. When I grabbed my phone, I was looking through my contacts and looking back at the names of my family members. The feeling of guilt and frustration surrounded my vulnerable soul, and it was hard to shake off. The voices that I had heard from my nightmares were becoming real. It was like a horror movie experience. When I put the phone down, the guilt, frustration, and voices disappeared. What the hell did I just experience? Was I cursed from ever speaking to my family ever again? After nearly suffering from a panic attack, I went to the restroom to splash water on my face to calm down a bit. Then that feeling of lacking self-confidence came to me again after looking at my reflection. I looked down on the floor in anger, and then suddenly I felt a spiritual presence. I began to hear the voice of another man. His voice was deep and powerful and echoed across my apartment. Who the hell was talking this loudly? I looked around the bathroom and went to look around the living room for the voice. The voice came back after a minute and started calling out my name. Who the hell was this man and what did he want with me? I quickly turned around to see a bearded man with a nice suit on. I was shocked to say the least that this man was actually God himself. Christians and Catholics can agree that the presence of God in any situation at any time can be very calming. The setting went from panicky to calm within seconds. This version of God, who I mentioned was in a nice suit, began to walk slowly towards me. God said hello, my name, and how I was doing. I was still in a bit of shock, but when I came to, I told him that everything was okay. God raised an eyebrow and asked if I was sure about the answer. Can God really see my lies as much as he sees everyone's lies and sins? He is really smart. I felt this aura around God and I felt like spiritual energy was flowing out of me. Almost as if he was trying to suck the truth out of me before I could get the words out. Before I could explain, he stopped me from speaking. With a smile, God explained how he saw what I was going through, and most recently, he saw that I was able to obtain a good paying job. At that moment, he began to explain my situation, how I'm supposed to plan this new chapter in my life, and also find myself as a person again. What the hell did I just witness? I had literally just received life advice from God within a physical presence. Or was I still in the fucking imagining this? So many thoughts in my mind were clouding my mental state, and God could see that I was in a state of shock. He put his hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eyes, and said that everything would work out just fine and to have faith in myself. He then said a prayer with me and told me that everything would work out for me. As he was about to leave my apartment, I thanked him and asked him about regaining the trust of my family. His smile disappeared and turned into a calmer look, and he walked out of my apartment. Did God not have an answer for regaining my family's trust? Or was he avoiding coming up with a solution that would benefit me and my family? I went to my bedroom and sat on the edge of my bed. I looked down at a piece of paper I had lying on my desk. I knew what I needed to do, and I started to write down the list of things I had to accomplish in order to better my future. The first thing listed was to save my money and have some financial stability. The second thing listed was to make sure that I was able to keep my job for as long as I can. The third thing listed was to give my family time for peace, and eventually they would reach out to me and forgive me for the stress that I put upon them. The fourth and final thing listed was to possibly keep a journal on me and write about my new chapter in life. The list seemed as if it was better said than done. I was conflicted at the fact that I would have to give my family time to have as much peace as they could have before I ever made contact with them again. I never had to deal with not being able to maintain contact with loved ones. As God put it, it was the only solution, so that way I can find myself again as a person and if possible, be able to pay my family back. Looking through my cabinets at my desk, there was a bunch of spiral notebooks and composition books that I hadn't touched in years. I was searching for one that was not written in, and by luck, I found one. Once I had looked at the notebook, I decided that maybe I should wait a little bit before I wrote something down in it. I needed to focus on making sure that my occupation as a police officer would work for me. I put the journal in the cabinet with the rest of the notebooks and journals I had and went to go to the store to grab food from the deli at the supermarket. Arriving at the store, I saw that the parking lot was almost full. I also saw that there were store employees outside handing out face masks in order for customers to enter. It seems like Code D was going around the area I was living in, and people were shopping in order to get what they could before the virus could go rampant amongst the citizens. The items that I grabbed were milk, cereal, eggs, pork sausage links, soda, frozen pizza and wings, ground meat, and hygiene products. After grabbing those specific items, I made my way to the self-checkout line. Oh, gosh. The camera kind of fucked around. Sorry. Jeez. What I saw next... Gosh. Alright, hold on. I want to make sure that the camera doesn't... Gosh. Alright. There we go. What I saw after grabbing those specific items, I made my way to the self-checkout line. What I saw next would be burned into my memory forever. There was a couple arguing with the store manager to enter since they refused to wear face masks. The manager asked that they would not be able to buy groceries unless they were able to follow Code D protocols. The couple were swearing at the store manager, and the husband threw a punch at the store manager's face. Gosh. I'm eating potato chips too, so I apologize for making my mouth dry. What ensued afterwards was a brawl between the couple and some other employees that were right where the store manager was. The husband pulled out a pistol and began to shoot it into the air. All the customers, including myself, ducked in order to avoid the stray bullets. Between the screams, I heard a mother scream that someone got shot by one of the bullets. The bastard husband shot someone. People that were near the shot individual were screaming for an ambulance. The wife then began to shout at her husband, calling him a fucking idiot, all the while sobbing. All of a sudden, one of the customers then pointed a gun towards the husband and told him to drop his gun. The bastard husband pointed his gun at the customer as a way of self-defense. It was an actual standoff happening in front of me. I didn't like the fact that the other guy pointing his gun at the bastard husband was a smart idea, but I understood because I suddenly realized that the armed customer was related to the person who got shot. The person who was shot, who was the teenage son of the father who was now on the standoff with the bastard husband. I could hear the mother of the teenage son screaming in agony, holding on to her son, and begging to God that her son wouldn't die in her arms. Both of the armed men were shouting expletives at each other, and the father pulled the hammer back on his gun, as if he was ready to shoot the bastard husband. Holy shit. Was this guy about to get revenge? I caught a glimpse of the father nearly squeezing the trigger to fire his gun, until the sound of sirens could be heard. Both armed men were still pointing their guns at one another. The environment was as tense as it could get. Customers were whimpering in fear, and some were crying as if they were about to get shot. The wife of the bastard husband then held onto him, pleading for him to put the gun away. The father then slowly pointed his gun at the wife, which then infuriated the bastard. Sorry. I was just laughing because my brother, man, he's having fun with his friends, so it's kind of a little bit distracting. So if I do laugh a bit, I'm sorry. It's just they're playing Smash Brothers. Anyway, the father then slowly pointed his gun at the wife, which then infuriated the bastard husband. This resulted in both men shouting, God damn it. Oh, my brother. He's distracting. And then, boom. Echoes of screams then filled the supermarket, and everyone, including myself, bolted out there with any groceries that we were carrying. Outside, the police were trying to tell everyone to evacuate. I got to my car and got the hell out of there. My heart was beating very rapidly as if the husband had pointed the gun at me. I had never seen someone fire a gun into the air and cause a riot, let alone I had never seen a standoff between two people. I made it back to my apartment safely and quickly put the groceries away. I could still hear people screaming outside and running away in panic. I then heard car horns going off as if there was a large traffic jam on the 324. I couldn't stop shaking after nearly escaping. It was all too surreal. Never did I think that there would be shootings that would happen during the pandemic, but I was wrong. 30 minutes after the shooting, I got a knock on the door. It was the police. They came by to ask about what I saw during the shooting. I told them about the pastor's husband refusing to put on a mask, pulling the gun out towards the supermarket employee in the aftermath of it. They then asked me. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I had to signal to him to stop because he knows I'm doing this, and I had to grab some chips and water. So sorry about that. Anyway, after being questioned by the police, I pulled out my smartphone and saw that the shooting was all over the news. Suddenly, I began having second thoughts of becoming a police officer. What if it didn't work out for me and I would end up a casualty like the other officers before me? No, I told myself. I couldn't think like that anymore. I needed to be brave. It was after lunchtime when I was on my laptop looking for any updates on the shooting that just happened. I couldn't find anything else and passed the time watching gaming videos to calm me down. I felt nervous every time I looked out the window because of the sounds of sirens from police vehicles and the ambulance van. By dinner time, I was still feeling nervous from the aftermath of the shooting. I kept thinking that a stray bullet for any of the men's guns could have killed me. Why the hell was I thinking negatively all of a sudden? I should be glad that I didn't get killed, but then again, that poor boy who was killed. This thought suddenly made me think about my own family. They knew that I lived near that exact supermarket, and they didn't want to call me to check on me. Was I really a burden to my family now? With my hands on my head, I kept saying to myself that I need to stop thinking like this, and that I need to get help. Not only that, I needed to get back to hitting the gym again. I was still a bit physically weak from my accident months ago. I needed to find my strength and confidence in myself again if I was ever going to get back to my old self physically and mentally. By nighttime, I still couldn't stop thinking about that poor man who had lost his son. I felt upset about what I saw and realized now why the Farley police needed help more than ever. Code D had made all of our lives a living hell, and it was hard for everyone to get along. It was like madness that couldn't be controlled. Panic shopping would turn into violence. Disagreements over the rules and not being allowed to enter into public places would turn into violence. Violence. That's all that made this pandemic so much worse. I try not to get worked up about it, so I pray for myself and for the teenage boy whose life was taken. After the prayer, I felt calmer and was able to sleep okay. Tomorrow is another day. Okay, so seeing that it's almost dinner time over here, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. And I'm going to go and eat. Sorry about all the little distractions. Oh, shoot. Sorry about all the little distractions that were going around. Like hearing the boys play Super Smash Brothers and me trying not to laugh at what they said and trying to hold in my coughs while my mouth was dry. Hopefully the next time that I do a live stream like this, nothing goes wrong, and we can get through it without any problems. Again, the computer that I'm working on is slow. I'm also using it to write a new novel. So that's a little bit of a surprise for you guys. There will be more details on it to come. I usually will post stuff like that on my social media. I will try to see if the next live stream I can leave the link tree to all my accounts for social media so that way you guys can follow. For now, that's going to be the end of the live stream for this live reading of The Darkest Winter. So I do thank you guys again for joining me. Whoever joined, whoever didn't join, this will be up on my YouTube channel within 30 minutes or so. So that being said, thank you guys again for joining. And I did leave a link in the comments of my author's page where you could purchase The Darkest Winter, my second novel, which is called The War of 2025, Act 1. And yeah, so you can go ahead and make a purchase there or read a sample, whatever you want to do. And I will see you guys in the next live stream. So this is your boy Taco signing off. I'll see you guys later.